Domestic violence, I want to talk about. It's a concern in communities across New Mexico. According to the National Violence Policy Center, our state has one of the highest rates in the nation of women who are murdered by a man. That often means a husband, boyfriend, or romantic partner. Here at New Mexico in Focus, we like to look at the broader context of issues like domestic violence. To do that, I sat down recently with 3 local leaders who are working to end domestic violence. We talked about the causes and what men can do to help end the cycle. I'm joined at the table by Kenneth Winfrey. He's the Health Outreach Coordinator with the New Mexico Office of African American Affairs. Esteban Machado Galaviz, he's a community educator with Enlace Comunitario, which serves immigrants who have experienced domestic violence. And Johnny Wilson is with us. He's from Young Fathers of Santa Fe. Kenneth, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Let's set some groundwork here. You've worked at this for a therapist for about 8 years now. Right. What are the driving forces behind domestic violence? Fundamentally, what drives men to this point when they're stressed? What happens here?
Well, it's different for all men.
Okay.
I mean, for some men it's stress. For some men it's perhaps a cultural variable. It can depend on a lot of factors. Right. A lot of times we don't hear about it in the media, but substance abuse can be a major factor in domestic violence, but they're not necessarily identified as having been using in that moment. And that can be for a number of reasons. Right. But it does contribute heavily. Some substance users don't even recall the instances where they were perpetrators of domestic violence because they were intoxicated. Right.
Well, I've heard that too, that alcohol especially is such a contributing factor to this situation. Yeah. Right on. Esteban, for immigrant families, my understanding of some of the shows we've done here at New Mexico PBS, keeping these situations close in the family, not telling a lot of folks about them, not letting a lot of folks know, you know what I mean, can sometimes really trap women in these situations. Talk about that, if you will.
Within domestic violence, part of the way to enforce that control over women is to intimidate, to isolate, right, which that's going to allow for the perpetrator to have more control over the victim. And obviously, for the victim, because of the social way that we see it, it makes a lot of trouble for women to be able to disclose what's happening because there's a lot of pressure, meaning that sometimes it's even thought that it's their fault. Because they now leave the relationship. What are they doing with this man? Right. But it's more complex than that. It has to do a lot more of it. They don't even know that they have options.
I see.
And that's going to be a huge problem, especially when it comes to looking for resources that's going to help you to get out of that situation.
Now, for your group, what do you offer for folks that walk in the door? What happens if somebody walks in and says, I'm having a problem in my home? How do you guide somebody through this?
Okay. Well, just so you know, Enlace Comunitario offers intervention services for the victims, right? And what it usually is being done is there's an intake to be able to understand if this person actually is under domestic violence, and then from there, try to provide the services. Enlace Comunitario offers legal services, counseling services, case management services. Me, myself, I actually belong to the prevention department. What we do is we bring education to the community with the intention to prevent violence within the families and have more healthy, especially emotionally, families.
I can imagine. Johnny, good to see you again. You were with us about 3 years ago on this topic. Yep. Good to have you back from Young Fathers of Santa Fe. Talk about, again, that word young is especially important here. What happens, and Kenneth, I want you to pick up on this as well. Is this a learned behavior for young men? Do folks watch their dads, their uncles do this and just sort of perpetuate this? What happens for young fathers?
To a significant degree, unfortunately, a lot of young people, a lot of children are learning from a very early age about abuse, neglect, and violence. Not in all of that in every home, but aspects of those in a lot of homes. And that's one of the real challenges is when you're starting out and all of that brain development at 0 to 3 and then on. It's very difficult when you're then a young adult or an adult and in a relationship to even identify where these uncontrollable feelings of anger and needing to strike out, where those things are even coming from. So it is a real challenge.
Is that part of what you offer for young men in Santa Fe, is how to identify those feelings and deal with them? Is that part of your work?
Absolutely. And just to be clear about my organization, we have expanded into central New Mexico.
Okay.
And we don't have an age limit on the fathers that we work with. We just want to support healthy fathers, healthy fathering, positive contributions to their children's lives, financially, emotionally, in every aspect.
Good deal.
And so we do, if we are working with a young dad who's challenged to have appropriate interactions with his partner or his children, we're definitely going to help him address that and look at the different ways that he might need that support.
Exactly right. Kenneth, pick up on that if you would.
Sure. Well, I mean, the larger cultural variables that I was talking about is just how violence plays a role in our society, right? I mean, I just saw a meme on Facebook, and it was attributed to the Dalai Lama. I haven't had a chance to look it up, but it says that they're quoting him, and he's saying that war should be illegal. War is wrong, but yet we've accepted war in so many words. We've accepted war as a part of life, but that violent intervention, using violence to solve a problem, sets a precedent, and it becomes the hammer for every nail that I can force my way into doing something. We have a cultural variable of patriarchy in our society that sort of says that men are supposed to be in control, which is an incredible amount of responsibility for us, but then it also turns into a desperate form of trying to maintain that unrealistic control through violent behavior.
That's interesting. That is I'm going to have to really think about what you just said. That's interesting because this is part of a bigger discussion I'm seeing all over about masculinity, how we identify with our masculinity, Esteban. You know, it's a difficulty for a lot of men to back up from themselves, literally, and take a clean look at themselves. Do you find this in your training? It's difficult to get men to look at themselves honestly. Is that part of the process?
Yes, I mean, one of the, let's say the theory that we have behind our agency is that it's not so much of a private problem, meaning that there's something wrong with that man. He's not capable of being nonviolent. It's not that, it's more understanding what Ken explained, more of a social norms that have influences as men, and which means that it is more of a social problem, which again, that tells you that it needs a social solution, which is going to include every one of us, including men.
Sure. What are you finding men are responsive to? I'm sure, you know, when you're in a difficult situation, you've reached this point in your life as a man, there's a lot to unwind. But is there a common thread that you have found that men can find agreement with that says, okay, I see this about me now? Is there a certain breakthrough point that you've noticed when you're dealing with men?
I mean, first you have to understand why of the violence. We tend to think, I mean, we have all of these contributions to violence, like we mentioned. I heard you guys mention stress, anger, emotions, but at the end, you become violent with whoever you want to. Because you use violence who you can with, which means that it is a decision.
I see.
So that gives you control over yourself, meaning that you are capable of being nonviolent. You just have to understand the why, what's behind it.
That's the difficulty, I'm guessing, getting honestly to that why part. I could imagine that. Do you find that as well, Johnny, that for men it's difficult to dig deep, and then once they do, perhaps there's a breakthrough of some sort?
Right. Well, we have these messages sent to us in our culture by and large to boys and men that are very confusing, right? Like, you're supposed to be in control. You mentioned that, right? Men have control and authority over their situation and do not need to seek outside assistance, right? That's part of being a man. You can take care of things. You can take care of things yourself, which is, of course, unrealistic. You know, I don't think there's ever been a time in human society where an individual could do that. We're interdependent. That's right. But this, it's very difficult for particularly young men, right, to look past these models they've been given and think abstractly about, well, maybe it is okay to ask for help. And
is part of the problem is the modeling that's been done for them that I'm imagining now you're going to have to look at that model, that uncle, that father, in a very different light as well. And is that part of your progress as well, coming out of the darkness of this?
Yeah.
Is being able to look at those other people?
It is.
Okay.
And of course, if you're challenging that,
Yeah.
there's a tendency to react like you're challenging the quality or the value of these men in their lives, which is, of course, not our intent.
Right.
The quality and the value of these men in their lives very often is very positive, even if there are troubling aspects to that.
It's
Right.
careful work.
Pardon me?
It's careful work.
It's careful work.
Really? What do you mean
Well
by that?
said.
What do you mean careful? That's interesting to me.
Well, because you have to learn to recognize your role model as someone who may not be emulatable in every way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So now you're sort of disseminating sometimes their memory of that person. And sometimes that's distorted even, right? So it all depends. How in control did I believe my father was? That's a big deal.
Sure.
But I think for me, what I've learned is that men are last at the buffet of feminism. Women have benefited greatly from what feminism represents, but we have not. And so we have a lot to learn from feminism because we have a lot to learn about our own feminine side or our own feminine existence.
Agreed.
The breakthrough that I've seen, like I said, it depends on the factor. Sometimes if the substances are eliminated, we have a breakthrough about the violence. But then to learn how to be a man without the directive of what it means to be a man in control or a man dominating. So if I have 24 hours in my day, maybe up until that point that violence became a part of my life, 23 of them I thought I was in control. So now once I've learned that my whole thought pattern was leading up to that, now I have to find something else to do with those hours in each day. Now I'm not making sure that my partner is where I think they should be. Maybe I'm thinking about where I should be.
I see.
Maybe I'm thinking about how I'm not in control, but how relationships actually contribute to my own well-being and that I need other people. And so my new job is at the Rape Crisis Center as a clinical director. Right. And a lot of our focus is on those kinds of development and developing those kinds of skills. And there's feminist framework, there's feminist theory that applies very well to men that we can avail ourselves. But that's all very new for us right now.
That's right.
Because we still live in a culture, exactly right now, that has some leadership that demonstrate patriarchal types of power.
Right.
And so
These things trickle down.
that's right, they do.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
They're our role models.
That's right.
You know.
Well, they've
Go ahead,
also
please, John.
provided great disadvantages for men, right? The lack of opportunity to bond with and have a relationship with
That's
your
right.
children, the lack of opportunity to really explore the meaning of relationship and conflict in relationship with your partner, right? Which, if you're doing it nonviolently, has huge benefits
Right.
to your own being,
I can
right?
imagine.
But we haven't been able to, a lot of the social messages are, we don't get to do that. We set the rules and we enforce them.
Right.
And we provide.
And we provide.
Right.
And all that means in our
Yes,
heads,
in our
exactly,
heads,
which could
right.
be different.
Yeah,
the-
providing safety
That's
means
right.
control. And
That's
all
right.
sorts of
That's right.
And another way is, feminism has given women the opportunity to go into the economic world, right, into career and developing those skills. And that aspect of feminism gives us the opportunity to not be the sole provider.
right.
Little weight lifted, right?
Yes.
And more latitude in our families, in our parenting roles, in our partnering roles.
If we're able to see it.
If
and
we're
take
able to
advantage
see
of
it.
it. Exactly.
It's a different
Esteban, women obviously need to be in this conversation, quite obviously, and your outfit does that as well. Talk about the importance of women in bringing men out of this situation. How does that work with your organization? How do you manage that?
Okay. We have a new program that has been working for about 3 years. And actually this program came because of women were asking for it. They were saying, what's happening? What is men doing about this issue? And we have to include also men on the cause, on the solution. And it's because of their voice that this program started. And it's very interesting because at the end, it not only benefits women, but also men, ourselves, like you mentioned. I like what you said. And because think about it, about the norms. You tell male to not cry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's a tiny example, right? But see how this is really complex to the sense that because of that, you are not going to agree if you see another man crying.
I see.
Which means that you're already oppressing another man.
That's right.
Which means that at the end, he's like you are a man, so you're going to oppress yourself. You're not going to allow yourself to cry.
Yes.
Because of that, you want to be accepted. So it's very interesting how we use this approach, understanding that we're not only helping our women, but
Yes.
we're also keeping safe our children, allowing them to have future generations without violence, and at the end, we're helping ourselves.
That's right.
We're giving ourselves that emotional space that we're not allowed to.
I have to imagine for younger women, this is a lot of benefits here about how to look at a man, literally, read the signs, understand what's going on, even outside their own family dynamics, all the things that they've been taught about how men are supposed to be with their own moms, their aunts. You see what I mean? Is that part of the program as well, is getting younger women?
Yes,
Yeah.
obviously you have to learn how to identify what is violence. That it's not only physical, it's also
Right.
emotionally, it's
That's right.
also verbal. There's other many types. That way you can know that you shouldn't get into an unhealthy relationship, a violent relationship. But at the same time, I mean, it's really complex. You learn that, but at the same time, you have to understand that you cannot give all the weight of the responsibility over women, meaning that we teach our children, women for instance, close your legs, be home before the night. But again, if something happens to her, you're saying it's your fault because you didn't follow this. Yeah, follow this. Instead, what we have to do is also make men responsible. Tell the boys, you have to treat women with respect. She's not a sex object. All of these messages where we can create that equality, but also responsibility on both sides.
I like that use of the word responsibility. That's a key there. Let's finish up, Johnny, with an idea about the future. Young men coming up. Obviously, as time goes on, young men, are going to be witnessing a different kind of a vibe out there. It takes time.
Yep.
You think about where we were in the 1850s, obviously things change over time. But what do we need to do to hasten this understanding? Is there something we can do in schools? Is there something we can teach all young men at a certain age? Do you know what I mean? Do you know where I'm getting at here?
Yes,
Is there
I
something
do.
to be done here?
It's a great question. I think specifically focusing on men, that for example, when we talk about sexual health, right? We talk about teen pregnancy prevention in this state quite a bit because of our high rates. Well, most people think about talking to the girls, the young women, about contraceptive options or saying no or whatever, right? We need to empower the men. We need to understand that a lot of violence and inappropriate behavior from men comes from a feeling of disempowerment and a feeling of, I don't know what to do and I'm afraid. And so that's one approach out of many that we could take with the men. But I would also broaden it out. Like violence in our culture, as Esteban so articulately mentioned, is not just men. And it's not just physical. It's verbal, it's neglect that we see in homes. And really, I'd love to see something like a Manhattan Project about relationship and how to be in a relationship and support and avoid violence and take care of children in a good way, really focus resources on that and offer and make it okay for people to access support services that if you're struggling because you have violent tendencies or you notice you're yelling at your kids a lot or whatever, you can go and get shame-free support to grow out of that, because you know what? I've seen very few people that I don't have the utmost confidence that they could do it if they were just given a safe space to do it.
It's a wonderful way to end this. Thank you, gentlemen, all for your work on this. It's a huge issue. We're going to take this on again here at New Mexico PBS. We appreciate your time. Absolutely.
Thanks, Gene.